Well, a lot happened in 2025. We had big political swings, inflation, tariffs dominated the headline, of course, even a historic shutdown as well. We're going to look back over the last year, look at some lessons we can take away from the things that happened in 2025 and apply them to 2026 and the years ahead. Welcome into Dollars with Dennis. Ben George with Dennis Hoare of Faith 401k and Money Management. Good to see you again as we talk 2025. Dennis, hey, plenty of headlines to kind of run through. We're going to narrow it down to five, but there's a lot to talk about this year.
There sure is. Too many, maybe.
I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure you've had plenty of discussions about these things with clients, but want to look at, really big of the five biggest stories, I guess, of the year, probably in terms of things that impact us financially, and just talk about the lessons we can learn from these. Obviously, the big thing you do when working is learning from past not only mistakes but just things that work, things that didn't work, and make changes moving forward. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to start with tariffs. This has been one that started back in, I think April was the big kind of month for it, but it's been kind of up and down with tariffs throughout the year. And I'm sure the years ahead we'll probably hear more about it. But man, the market really just became very volatile around this news, didn't it?
Yeah, the pressure of the new tariffs in April and the volatility, because nobody really knew what to expect, how much, how long. So there was some rollbacks on a few things. Some prices got changed to help it go through. We've been through a lot this year, and as we typically do, we're pretty resilient as an economy, and we continue to push forward. And the Fed chair has introduced. He said that the tariff related inflation might take a long time to figure it out, because there was a lot of things affected in that, and the tariff drama, just really the tariff drama versus political drama around the world. Who's pointing fingers at who? There's a lot, and so 2025 will be a earmarked for a long time, but it's not new. We've had them for a long time.
Yeah, definitely have, and I think a lot of people learned that. But there was still plenty of reaction to tariffs when they were coming around, and when Trump talked about them taking effect, and a lot to learn from this past year. You mentioned inflation. Now, I know inflation has dropped over the last few years, which has been nice, but it's still clearly persisted throughout the year. Just go to the grocery store, Dennis. I think you've probably seen it. If you go in there and try to spend any, even just try to go buy a few things, your bill ends up being a lot higher than you ever anticipated. So how does this apply to planning and how retirees should be thinking about just spending adjustments, withdrawal rates, everything that goes around an inflationary environment?
What brings the focus on planning. So why we continue to push people to have a retirement plan, to have the numbers in place before they retire, 5 or 6, 7 years before they retire, because you want to be able to know when you're going to the grocery store or get gas, if your budget's changing, that you have the ability to do that. And we continue to try to invest money for the long term and take less out for the long term, so that people can get an inflation-proof income, so their income doesn't stay flat the same every year after year. So if we invest it properly and have a proper withdrawal strategy, we should be able to accomplish that. Because I've been to the grocery stores, and when they say inflation is dropping, but it's still year over year. So when it was up 9% a couple of years ago, and then it dropped to being 3%, it was 3% on top of the 9%. So those prices, they don't seem to go back down. They probably won't, but we're getting better at making the adjustment there. It feels like to me.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to, but there are some adjustments that come with inflation. Again, why you have to plan, right? You always have to be prepared. Even when inflation's not in the news, you got to be planning for it and planning around it. So something to think of going into 2026. All right, what about the high yield savings accounts? They stayed strong again, despite inflation pulling back some. I think they're maybe pulling back a little bit more as the Fed makes their decisions. But how do these HYSAs, as we'll call them, kind of fit inside a cash and a conservative strategy for people they're planning for retirement, Dennis?
Well, that's been a great side of the higher prices, is we're making more money off of the money that we didn't make money on for a long time. For 10 years, money sitting in cash or money markets or high yield savings was pretty low. So the last couple of years, getting a nice return there really helps offset the budget, and helps you with the expenses going up and so forth. And it really makes it. Somebody said they're getting 4.5%. Would you do something different? If that's your emergency fund, if that's your fallback on cash, absolutely not. That's a great return. I would stay there. I like to keep 6 months or so of expenses in liquid areas so that you don't get swung by the day to day needs and changes. So then you can look at broader cash and income strategies after that. But the fact that they stayed higher for longer has really helped out the consumer.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll stay above the 3% range. I know depends on where you shop. There are some big banks actually from my bank, Dennis, just recently sent me an email about promoting and marketing their new savings account, and they had this fancy name for it. And I opened it up, and it was a 0.5%, and I was just like, I think I can find some better options right now than that.
Well, you do have to be careful when you get those offers. As I see them, so my son just said he got something that was like 4.25% on a savings account, and so you look at it. So it was really for the next 5 months, and you had X amount you had to deposit and so forth like that. So you got to read the fine print, and if you can live with those terms, take advantage of them while you can.
Yeah. All right, another big one from 2025 was the one big beautiful bill, and this was a big one in many ways, especially as it relates to taxes and a lot of planning items that goes around this one big beautiful bill, Dennis. So how are you working around this and working with clients on your tax planning, and how has this impacted things for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of noise with the big beautiful bill for sure, but really, if you think about it, the tax credits that were in place already were set to expire the end of this year, and taxes would have gone up. We hadn't experienced that yet, so the big beautiful bill will extend those tax credits into the near future. So mostly we just didn't get increased taxes, so we're running into increased spending, which is not a good thing. And some of the ways they wrote out we're still trying to learn all the things that they put in there, but for mostly, I think they said that if I got this right, that you wouldn't pay taxes on Social Security and if you're retired. And I think what it came out is that they couldn't figure out how to change that, so they're giving most retirees a $6,000 credit, a tax credit at the end of the year instead of not paying taxes on that. So it came out a little bit different. Same thing with the no tax on overtime, the wording, you got to really check there. So it sounded really good on the front end, but I think spending is still too high, and we don't have enough tax revenue to cover it. So the big beautiful bill just kept us in the ballgame a little bit longer with the current tax structure.
And also does give a reason for people to actually sit down and discuss Roth conversions now too, right? There might be some opportunities there.
Get a lot of questions about Roth, and one of and this came from actually Secure Act 2.0, but the ability to at some point take 529 money and move it into Roth money, that's a huge win, because people that had enough money saved for college and didn't spend it all, if they took it out, they were going to pay some taxes. So that gives them another way to diversify and have retirement money for the future and not pay those taxes. But Roth is a big story here, and we hear it from pretty much everybody.
All right, one last one that we'll close out this episode with. That was the record-breaking 43-day government shutdown that lasted through October into November. Obviously, had a immediate short-term impact. It hit SNAP benefits. Federal employees got hit. Obviously, here travel disruptions. Anybody that tried to travel to that time, it was very risky. But what did this teach us about just being prepared, Dennis?
Yeah, so Boy Scout, right? You want to have an emergency fund. You want to have your tools with you, your backpack, so you can go and so forth. Short-term impact, and the feel really bad for the workers that didn't get paid for 43 days if they didn't have any reserve, and that's why we like to have a plan in place. We like to have 6 months of spending in cash somewhere, if that's possible, because 43 days wouldn't really affect you too much. I actually did travel through, I went to New York and back during that time and got delayed coming back, but it wasn't. And I asked if it was because of the shutdowns, and it was a storm hitting the East Coast, so it took a while to get out of New York. But got back safely. So, but I've heard other people, including a client that was in yesterday that got stuck in Chicago for a couple of days trying to get rerouted back here. So it was an impact. It was some of the other benefits were disrupted. The long-term impact is still unclear, but it seems like it would be modest in the big picture. We've had shutdowns a lot over the last 50 years, but this one being the longest one will give you a new view on going without a paycheck for 43 days. That gives you practice for retirement when you don't get a paycheck at all and you're living on what you save. So it's an opportunity for us to check where we are, what we've done, and be prepared next time it happens, because it will.
It will. It will. And we don't know if it'll be 2026 or 27 or the years ahead. Who knows? We don't know what the future holds. But the one thing you can control is your planning. If you haven't set up a plan, now is the time to sit down with the team like Faith 401k Money Management to begin discussing how prepared are you? What do you need to be doing to take those next steps towards retirement? And if you are in retirement, want to make sure that you are in a good spot and confident about where you're headed in the years ahead. But a lot to look back on, and appreciate the year in review. Dennis, anything you're watching specifically for in 2026?
Continued growth, probably a slowdown, and just hoping that we don't get the big correction. We just get a slowdown. It seems like corporate profits are so good, so we feel like we're in a good place.
Very good. Well, feel free to reach out. 401k.faith is the website. You'll find all the contact info in the show description as well. Thanks again for watching Dollars with Dennis. We'll talk to you again soon.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.